Hey, everybody. You are about to hear a brief retelling of the movie Sixth Player. Enjoy the movie. The Tyler brothers play on the high school basketball team. The gym teacher asks his son Antoine to stop kicking the ball into the parking lot. The team is down by 1 point and the man says his youngest son Kenny should make the last shot. A and K are forever written on a poster by his mom. Little Kenny is stopped at ringside, but he doesn't believe in himself and spasms back at his talented brother. However, Antoine was unable to throw the ball and the team lost. The distraught kid doesn't understand how he could have missed. Mr. Tyler reminds his sons that they should always play with passion and dignity, and if the brothers always stick together, everything will be possible. Separately, their father spoke to Kenny and asked him to believe in himself and his strength. Years later, the Tyler brothers are the biggest stars on the varsity team. Thanks to their endeavors, the Washington Huskies can become champions for the first time in 10 years. During halftime, the team mascot was injured and passed out. Coach Pedersen is giving them instructions if they're going to break through. Kenny intercepted the ball as he should have and gave it to Antoine. He makes a slam dunk. The commentators predict a professional career for Antoine. Mom congratulates her sons and says that their father would be very proud of them. In the evening, the whole team gathers at the bar. Kenny looks at his girlfriend and his full glass is knocked over by a fat man. The beer spilled all over the bar and went straight into the smiling stranger's purse. Kenny had no choice but to apologize and leave. At the same time, Antoine got into the ring on a dare while standing blindfolded with his back to the ring. Cheryl came up to him, unhappy that the guy was dynamiting her, but Antoine's first priority right now is the competition. Kenny's not so good with the girls. Right now, to prove the opposite, he bet his brother that he could get the phone number of absolutely any girl here, and Antoine pointed to the stranger. The girl realized what was about to happen and just left the place, but she didn't run away from Kenny himself. Strange that such a talented player turned out to be so clumsy. The girl gave her name, A.R.C. St. John, and left Ken alone. Turns out that R.C. is a new reporter at the student newspaper and she complimented Kenny on the latest article. The Huskies have an important game tonight. With 4 minutes to go, they win by 2 points. The Huskies are getting closer and closer to the NCAA championship. Kenny made a fall and after 2 free throws the Huskies went on offense. Kenny passed to his brother and he made a slam dunk in typical fashion. Right at that moment something happened to him and the basketball player fell to the floor. Antoine was put on a stretcher and taken off the court. He promised his brother he would come back. Kenny is very worried about him. Already on the street Antoine began to lose his pulse, and in the ambulance his heart stopped and the guy was resuscitated. The Huskies have lost, but Kenny is not worried about that. He hurriedly changes his clothes to go to the hospital, but the coach came into the locker room with a mournful face and said that Antoine died on the way to the hospital. A heart attack. A distraught Kenny is hugged by the entire team, and after that the Huskies have 4 straight losses. Kenny can't get it together, reporters are bugging him. Left alone on the court, he speaks aloud to Antoine and says he can't handle it on his own and needs his brother's help. R.C. approaches the guy to offer condolences. Kenny complains that everyone keeps bugging him about Antoine's death. The coach still hopes they can make it to the big leagues, but they need to start winning. He scolded Serbian ZG Rabasek for trying to shoot a 3-pointer, which he never does. A disgruntled Kenny tossed the ball up and somehow it never came back down. Coach Pedersen supports Kenya. However, he warns that he may have to be replaced before the end of the season, but he is an important link. If he pulls it together, he could save the team. Pedersen needs a leader. Kenny, he says, is still playing with his brother in his heart. Next game, the Huskies lose by 12 points, and the worst player tonight is Kenny Tyler. Suddenly the guy heard someone whispering advice. The ball suddenly reached Danny and he put it in the hoop. But the opponent's ball bounced out of the ring, even though it went straight into it. With 7 seconds left in the game, the Huskies are down by 1 point. The opposing team has the ball and suddenly it's flying out of the basketball player's hands like a cannonball. Tyler makes a pass, but the ball goes straight to the basket on a weird trajectory and the Huskies score 3 points to win the game. "Great game, brother," heard Kenny whisper again in the locker room. "I'm right there with you. Don't you recognize me?" The faucets in the shower opened on their own and Antoine emerged from the water. Kenny tried to convince himself he was delirious, but suddenly his brother grabbed him from behind. Hitting the ghost didn't work. Antoine reminds his brother of his father's words that if they are together, anything is possible. Kenny is the only one who can't see him because he's the one who called him and his brother has to get used to it. After all, they'll be fighting for the championship. Kenny is now constantly distracted by his brother's jokes and from the outside it looks very strange. Ghost keeps up with him for a minute and embarrasses him every time. The game is evenly matched today. Major was already running out of the line, but Antoine kicked it right back to the basket. Another time, he covered Robasek. To keep the opponents from getting points, Antoine just sat on the hoop and kept throwing the ball away. Even with such tricks, the game turned out to be equal. As always, everything would be decided in the final seconds. Kenny starts pushing with his brother. RC realizes there's something wrong with him. Antoine decides he has to do everything himself and wakes up and passes to Kenny. He put the ball in the basket in the style of his brother. Thanks to the victory, the Huskies finally made it to the big leagues. But in the locker room, Kenny's strange behavior raised questions. The players thought he was out of his mind with grief. Kenny approached RC, but according to her, the invisible man is already keeping her company. In light of recent events, he didn't even realize it was a joke at first. After being asked out, the journalist started talking about the game. Somehow it all looks supernatural. The players hang in the air for 6 seconds, and the ball flies on some wild trajectory. Suddenly, Antoine came out of the pool. Kenny first screamed with fright, and then started talking to the ghost. What on earth is he seeing? RC wondered. Antoine advises not to get involved with the journalist. She will definitely sniff out something, but in Kenny's opinion, his brother is just jealous of him. He himself now only sees girls from horror movies. For these words, Antoine took Kenny in a chokehold right in the middle of the street and continued to torture him in front of the basketball players. They are convinced that their star definitely drove the geese and demand Kenny to explain himself, but he doesn't stop and the weirdo looks the same strange. Eventually, he says it was all his brother Antoine and gulps for air. He asks the ghost to appear in front of the others as well so they will believe it. Kenny throws the ball to a low Denny and tells him to do a slam dunk. Antoine helps him jump. Dennis sprinted and then soared and made it to the basket. Everyone is amazed, but not enough to believe the ghost. Then Antoine gave them a natural poltergeist and appeared on the big screen. The mascot tried to hit the ring for the 15th time this season, but it ended in injury for him again. Tonight is the first major league game. McClatchy's RC, the boss, sits her down and says she needs a career breakthrough. And there's something weird going on with the team, and it's definitely Kenny, who she's gotten close to. If she tries hard enough, she could be on the cover of the sports news. Antoine demands that his brother pass to the Serbian to make a three-pointer, and the blonde does well, his first successful attempt of 13 shots. There was a scuffle on the court when the opponent remembered brother Kenny. The asshole was about to make a free throw. Antoine got into it, and with all his might launched the ball under the dome. The next time Antoine possessed the ball, he demanded that the asshole not poke him in the eye. When he got scared, he just threw the ball away and ran away. The Huskies won, and Kenny scored a game-high 36 points. The team celebrates in the locker room. Kenny goes on a date with RC. The girl is trying to find out what the secret of his incredible game is, as always in the personal affairs of his brother, Antoine. He doesn't like journalists. In the bathroom, Kenny looks between his legs and demands that he not get out when not asked, especially on a date. The other guy misunderstands him. Antoine keeps pestering the younger man and pours hot sauce all over his dish, and then douses it with water. The weird date came to an end. Kenny was about to kiss RC, but with an ugly face, he jammed into the palms of his brother's hands. He jerked ahead of Antoine and pecked the girl on the cheek and then again on the lips. Kenya quarreled with his brother. The coach came out to the noise and asked who he was talking to. Antoine did not stop grumbling and eventually took offense and left his brother, kicking the fisherman from the picture. But he didn't really leave his brother anywhere. The Huskies are performing well in the championship. Once, Antoine even had members of the opposing team punch each other in the face. As the Huskies approach the finals, during the next game Antoine demands that his brother listen to him instead of the coach. He also walked into Luther and broke a rule in his body. The player had to be replaced. Luther wants Antoine off his back and Kenny tells his brother that he has lost his head and is already hurting the team. Although of course the Huskies win again by 19 points. Maklitsky demands that RC get information about the unusual team, and at this point, while watching the game tape, she noticed that Luther didn't even touch the ball during the shot, and she also lip-read that the player mentioned the dead Antoine. The team traveled to New York for the final games. The guys stopped by to talk to Kenny. They don't want Antoine on the team anymore. He won't let anyone play. Just like when he was alive. Ghost freaks out and starts trashing the room. Antoine tells the basketball players that they're ungrateful. Kenny had the last word. Kenny decided it was time to tell RC about everything, and just then Maklitsky and the sports reporters called her in, but the girl still didn't want to give away her boyfriend's secret and threw the sensational article in the trash. The Huskies reached the semifinals. The team's mascot jumps toward the ring for the 17th time, and this time Antoine still saved the poor guy and interrupted his string of injuries. The Dogs are opposed by college star Smith. He expresses his respect for Kenny and has a kind word for his brother. The team can't do anything against Smith. He's tearing opponents apart. Antoine got angry and launched Smith into the basketball backboard. The star was injured and his team lost. The Huskies made it to the finals. Kenny went to check on Smith at the hospital and he had a concussion and a broken collarbone. RC figured it was Antoine's doing. He's dead, but he's still in charge of his brother. Kenny comes into the locker room before the game to talk to Antoine. He asks him to stay on the bench tonight. Kenny is tired of the cheating. Antoine reminds him that they've always been partners and dreamed of a champion. Except Kenny thinks he's been on the sidelines his whole life and in his brother's shadow. If Antoine takes the court tonight, they won't play. It's better to lose. Antoine got mad and left. Coach is encouraging the boys and asking them to give it their all. But they're facing the clear favorites. 3 of the Minutemen are future NBA stars. The Huskies are expected to lose from the start, even though they're trying hard. The first half ended with a score of 42 out of 22. The guys are frustrated. It seems that without Antoine they are really nothing. They can't win without the Ghost, but Kenya has a different opinion. They should certainly return to the court with Antoine, but in their hearts, with an understanding of what he has given to the team. Ghost heard his brother's word and let a tear fall. The Huskies began to rebound with great enthusiasm. The commentators point out Kenny's phenomenal play. Ziggy makes a three-pointer. With 2 minutes left in the game, the Huskies lose by only 4 points. They're almost expired. 17 seconds and a 2-point lead for the Minutemen. They switch to a tight defense. 7 seconds later, the Minutemen have the ball, but on a pass, Kenny intercepts the ball and drives to the basket. He makes a shot from behind the three-point line, and at that moment Antoine appears to back up his brother, but Kenya asks him not to touch the ball and the Ghost disappears. And no help was needed. The ball went in the basket and the Huskies were champions. As everyone celebrated the victory, Antoine waved to his brother and headed for the lights. He recognizes that this was Kenny's victory and he was just in his way. Before leaving, Antoine reminds Junior of his father's words and wishes him to be champion next year as well. Later, Kenny looks towards the light and the coach asks him if this is our 6th player. Yes, Kenny replies. A&K all the way.